about to bring to you a very interesting and candid conversation on the business case for the pathways for net zero carbon emissions. It is such a pleasure to have here with us Mr. Mahesh, Palashikar, President, GE South Asia. We welcome you, sir, in conversation with Ms. Namrata, Rana, Director, Strategy and Brand, Futurescape, India Ambassador of University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. Let's listen in.
It's fabulous to be here today. Thank you so very much, Economic Times. Hi, Mahesh. It's wonderful to speak to you. And my primary reason for speaking to you, and I'm really delighted that you're here today, is to understand GE's priorities in the energy space. Mainly because 2021 has been a fabulous year in terms of the initiatives that we have all looked at as part of the Glasgow Summit. And I want to understand how you are viewing these trends and what are the biggest priorities that are going to be for you for the next few years.
Thank you, Namrata, and thanks to Economic Times. This is a fantastic forum and opportunity for us, and we appreciate you having us here. As the world has seen very rapidly and progressively, climate change and decarbonization is becoming by far the topmost global priority. It doesn't matter which part of the world, which geography you are in, the governments all over are focused on this as a top priority. We feel very privileged the way we are positioned as General Electric company to offer lot of technology, product, services, and digital solutions, which will help the governments, which will help the customers achieve these goals. We are also very mindful that the world is not necessarily at the same trajectory. Different countries, different geographies, different regions will have different goals over the next several decades. So we are fortunately present in more than 170 countries, working closely with the stakeholders, communities, and then aligning with the goals that they have and offering them the value to achieve those goals. So very exciting times for us, Namrata. By far the topmost priority, and GE is present in very large high-tech industrial businesses, aviation, energy, as well as healthcare. And if you talk of the aviation and energy businesses, these have a direct positive impact based on what we offer to our stakeholders, customers, and governments to help them with the energy transition. So decarbonization as the global priority, we aligned with that, and then offering our value for energy transition. That's really what we are focused on, Namrata.
Thank you, Mahesh. That's really interesting. And, I've always wondered whether we will actually have net zero aviation ever. Is that a possibility? Because, as you know, they are the hard to abate sectors. So people are talking about the fact that steel, cement, aviation are really tough things to crack. And you're in aviation. How is that going to work out?
Yeah. I think this is a great question. A few years back, people would have been more circumspect about the possibility and feasibility. But as time has progressed, and I'm sure in the future, as time will further progress on technology evolution, we do believe that there are some very specific priorities that the sustainable flying, we call it future of flight. We are really focused in General Electric on enabling future of flight, which is decarbonized. It's not only the future of flight for technology, but decarbonizing the future of flight. That is the way our aviation business looks at it. And there are some great breakthroughs that we would like to achieve in this space. There are specific programs. We have a program with our joint venture partner, CFM, which is called a RISE program, RISC. And this RISE program really focuses over the next few decades to achieve more than 20% CO2 reduction. So you can imagine now, Namrata, it's not only a possibility, but there are specific goals, there are specific timelines, and there are specific programs in which we are making significant investment. So with all of that, one would feel much more confident that yes, we are progressing towards that net zero aviation one day.
It's a very exciting time, mainly because this kind of transformation that we are seeing in sector after sector after sector has only happened at the time of the great industrial revolution. So in my mind, the energy revolution that we're going through right now is pretty similar to that, because energy is the core. It impacts every single thing around us. And that has cross-cutting impacts, direct, indirect impacts on every single thing. what are the big opportunities that you see that are emerging because of this transformation? Say, for example, you mentioned aviation. So, there are two things in aviation, which will be the transformation in fuel, it'll be the transformation in materials used for aeroplanes, and like that, I'm assuming there are many, many other big transformations that you see happening within your organization, within your company's customers' organizations, and across the board.
Yeah. There are two important points. I think every company, starting with ourselves, but every company, may it be large industrial companies, may it be the technology companies, may it be our customers who are in the thick of the power generation, transmission, distribution, where we enable them, where we help them with technologies and solutions. All of these companies are very aggressively now taking goals and publishing these goals for achieving net zero. That's the great thing that we all should feel good about all across the world. What we can do is, I mentioned about the aviation. If you look at the energy space, we have almost 1/3 of world's electricity, which is generated, that is supported by GE technology. So we have a very big role to play. We have a very leading role to play to support the customers across generation, transmission, and distribution. If you look at generation, we have different types of fuels. I mentioned that the world will need to continue today with some of the coal-fired power plants as we transition to the renewable energy. And we really look at this as the solving the energy trilemma. So affordability, reliability, and sustainability. You just cannot have one. You have to solve for all of these three. And in GE, we are focused on solving this energy trilemma. And what are we doing in that space? You have the renewable energy when it comes to onshore wind offerings, offshore wind technologies, and we have some very leading technologies. The investment that we have done in the offshore wind, we have a 14 megawatt Haliade X technology, which is world's leading technology. If you look at onshore wind, different parts of the world have different wind regimes, and we specifically customize the solutions to lower the cost of electricity so that customers produce the wind energy at a lower cost of electricity. So wind is one big pillar which is continuing to grow. The second is hydro. There are hydro power plants, and rather than the traditional hydro power plants, now there are pumped storage solutions that the hydro offers, which are storage solutions. While you might have heard about the battery storage solutions, you will increasingly see more pumped storage hydro solutions. So that is in the hydro space. We are also mindful that gas, natural gas power generation will be needed to accelerate the transition. While we want to get to renewable energy as fast as possible, 100% generation as soon as possible, but there is a bridge that natural gas can help to get there. And then control the emissions for the coal-fired power plants. So we are very proud. We are the only company which can serve across this entire range of fuels and across the transmission, distribution, generation of the energy. So very big role that we are playing supporting customers.
That's really interesting that these technologies are now available. So in a way, all the technologies that are should be there for the net zero transition are actually available, right? It's just that the transformation of organizations to actually adopt them is not necessarily at the same pace of technological change. So, how do you actually convince customers? How do you enable them to actually take these big decisions to transition? And it's not just organizations, it's governments, it's municipalities, it's everybody that has to sort of work together to enable that the transformation. What are your thoughts in terms of accelerating the change?
Yeah. And you are right that this has to be across the food chain. This has to be across the value chain. And the way you asked about how do you convince, I think the time honestly has come where the environment and the social commitments and the governance has become a priority for small, medium, large, all organizations. We have publicly announced by 2030, we want to have our internal operations carbon neutral. And then by 2050, our aspiration is to be net zero as General Electric company. You have similarly heard very large countries, very large corporations, and also large government institutions who are committing to those targets. You mentioned about the Prime Minister. He has now committed to 50% renewable energy generation by 2030, which means You really have to accelerate from today where India is. We have 100 gigawatts of installed, and the Prime Minister really has an aspiration to reach 500 gigawatts. So adding the 400 gigawatt is something that the ecosystem is now getting aligned to and getting that accepted as a reality. So I think convincing is not a big issue, but when we make such commitments as a company, or when government makes such commitments, I think the entire ecosystem also starts aligning to it. It is important to mention that you have to continuously bring the technology solutions, but still be cost competitive. I mentioned to you about the trilemma. One of the legs of the three legs of the trilemma is affordability. You want sustainable, you want it to be reliable. The wind and solar can have different times of the day. You want it to be reliable. So storage solutions play a role, and the cost competitiveness has to be there. So that is the way we add value. But honestly, Namrata, I think people are realizing that ESG is the way to go. You don't need a lot of convincing. We definitely bring the solutions to enable them.
So, in a way, that you're saying that it's not about the desire to change is there, but it's the fact that we need to accelerate, and that needs a little bit of an impetus. Now, as you very well know, our grid is not geared towards handling large quantities of renewable energy. So, there is going to be a huge transformation of the grid. There's the other issue, which is the jobs and the skills challenge. So if we change the energy ecosystem, the jobs and the skills that are enabling that transition also have to change. And the third piece is obviously financing the transformation. And I really believe that these are the challenges that if we actually work together on, these can enable the transformation that that the world actually seeks, not just India. We are part of that entire ecosystem that actually needs to transform this. So, just to finish up, Mahesh, what do you think are the top three priorities for India at the moment, and any timelines that you see emerging around these transformations?
Sure. I think you rightfully mentioned that the grid transmission, the jobs, the skilling, and the financing, first and foremost priority, if one has to call out, is we will need to leverage what we have existing fleet and make it more emission free. We all know around the country, and especially in the northern part of India, last few weeks have been very, very bad in terms of the air quality. And this is as real and as close as it gets to all of us as common citizens. So emission controls on the fleet that we already have, and that way helping the climate change, has to be one of the topmost priorities. Second priority has to be shaping and allowing the policies. You mentioned about the infirm nature of wind and solar. So shaping the policies which allow hybrid to be much more than wind in isolation, than solar in isolation. And one has to give credit to the Government of India and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, that they are really pushing the hybrid tenders and hybrid volume very aggressively. So I think having that flexibility, that you need natural gas to accelerate decarbonization, you need wind and solar, you need the hybrid architecture, but allow these other fuels to bring firmness. That's the piece. And then for grid, you really need digital solutions and modernization of the grid. It's not only the grid capacity, but bringing in the digital and data analytics to improve the losses, to improve the transmission, to improve the efficiency, because you might generate wind and solar at one place, you may have to take it far. So that is, I think, the second piece. The third piece is the US government and Indian government in the last few weeks has focused on the financing and the lending piece, Namrata, that you asked about. So there definitely is going to be a the funding to the developing countries to make the energy transition will increase, must increase, will get accelerated. I think these are the big areas, priorities that one could look at probably next 10 to 20 years. You will definitely get hydrogen into the mix. We will have technology. We have technology today, and we will have superior technology tomorrow, where hydrogen can be a big part of the fuel that we can burn without causing any emissions. But this is across the hybrid grid and the financing that you asked, Namrata.
Thank you so much, Mahesh, for putting that in context. And I'd like to just end by saying that the zero carbon, low carbon, green future is there on the horizon. The issue really is how fast we can accelerate towards it. And maybe this is really a time of collaboration where organizations, countries, and cities need to all come together with common citizens to transform our entire ecosystem. Thank you so much, Mahesh. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Namrata. And as I said, GE is committed. GE fortunately is positioned in the best place. So we look forward to this faster energy transition. Thanks a lot. Thanks to you and Economic Times.
And greener flights.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Mahesh Palashikar, for joining us, for your inputs, for all that you at GE are doing. And of course, like you very rightly mentioned, that in the future, we are going to see more and more superior technology come into play that is going to work towards our aim of meeting net zero carbon emissions. And Ms. Rana really put it, that we have to collaborate, we have to work together, and the green future is really on the horizon. So I'd like to thank both of you for joining us and making this such a spectacular conversation. And once again, let me extend a very warm welcome to our delegates who are just joining in right here at GE Presents the Economic Times Net Zero Summit, co-powered by Skoda Volkswagen, with our all-new theme, mainstreaming net zero, innovation, growth, and transition. This is going to be a very, very exciting session for all of you. I'd like to request our delegates to please participate in our survey, because through that, we're going to know a lot about where your thoughts are going, what you and your organizations are thinking. I'd also like to encourage you to join the conversations and carry them forward on your social media. Do remember to tag us using our hashtag #ETNetZero. We have a lot in store for you today. Very soon, a conversation on climate transition action plans, decarbonizing the business in just a bit. So please stay tuned.